Hello, Ben. Welcome to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast.
Hey Elizabeth, how are you? Thank you for
Good.
having me. Thank you. I appreciate being here, and I know I was supposed to be on earlier, and I don't a couple months back, but a lot's been going on. But I'm glad that we're finally able to be here together, and
Yes.
I appreciate your hospitality and patience along the way too.
Oh, no worries. I mean, we give caregivers a lot of grace, for sure, and nothing is more important to me than family. So I want to first say that I'm sorry for the loss of your dad, which is why we had to reschedule our event. And I know there's a lot, the grief is exhausting, and that there's a lot of details that go in, not just your emotional grief, but the doing is exhausting as well. So I'm glad we could make this work.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yes, it was definitely a challenging time, and but you just go, you get through, you just keep moving forward, and you try to focus on the positive and everybody else. I did lose my dad, but thankfully my mom is still here, and got to focus on her, make sure she's doing okay. And you got to hopefully focus on ourselves a little bit too. Just
Yes.
sneak a few minutes of your some me time in there, but and keep everybody happy and healthy. That goes with but
Yeah.
right.
Way to segue. Way to segue. So we start the show off by some inspiration, words of encouragement from Happy Healthy Caregiver jar. It's a very fancy jar that I made for my sister when I transitioned care of my mom to her because it's a lot. Caregiving is a lot of responsibility. I wanted to just share this and get your thoughts on it. So it says, we generate fears while we sit, we overcome them by action. We generate
Wow.
fears while we sit, we overcome them by action. So I know that's deep.
That's
Um,
easy. That,
it's funny
yeah.
because I actually teach, I speak when I'm not podcasting and doing the other things I do. I'm a speaker for employers and different organizations. And one of my topics is actually worry warts, uh, about taking care of business and taking action, because sometimes I think we do get in our head a lot and we start to think about all the fears that we have, and it's going to relate, I think, a little bit to what we talked to today. But
Mhm.
sometimes the best way to mitigate a fear is by taking action. What's your thought on that?
I would agree. I would agree. I think that, I mean, listen, from experiences you just said, you spend a lot of your time talking for in businesses and whatnot. But I think it's true, probably. I mean, and again, I wasn't prepared with this kind of these words of wisdom that you're pulling out of your jar, your special jar there.
Oh, you just
But
wait. The lightning round's coming too. You're in for
um,
it. No,
all
just
right, Dom. Listen, I'm excited. So,
yeah.
but I would say that that's true because at the end of the day, yes, when you're sitting, so to speak, and not doing, there are real fears that you can be contemplating that actually exist. I don't mean just getting in your own way with, like you said, which is true. People get in their own way, get in their head, and create a lot of anxiety that might not even actually exist. But even for the part that actually does exist, I feel like if you go into action mode, you end up realizing that you can overcome a lot of what does exist. And the parts that you can overcome, you realize how to cope with that. You know what I mean? There are
Mhm.
some fears that are real. There are some obstacles that are real. And I mean, for sure, when you go into the caregiving world and that space, and I've been dealing with that for personally for a long time. I've been for 15 years professionally dealing with Medicaid assistance and people transitioning to long-term care. And personally, I mean, as Elizabeth, as you said, I just lost my dad, who was sick for a number of years with ALS, a terrible disease, and I
Mm.
was extremely, extremely involved in his care. And yeah, there is a lot of fear, especially when you're looking down the kind of the barrel, of an ALS kind of diagnoses. But when you actually get into action, you deal with it, and you deal with it in real time, and you do the most you can, and you try to bring out the biggest quality of life and the most that you can get out of technology and different supportive tools and people that exist around. You realize that as much as you can do away with a problem, you can make that problem a whole lot better. Like,
Mhm.
you can live with a problem and you can figure out how to create life with that issue versus just succumbing to the challenge and just curling up into a ball. So
Yes.
it's a very true,
It's fresh for you. I did not realize your dad had ALS. I recently spoke at ALS of Georgia, and it's tough, right? It's a tough audience. It was the ALS care partners and their caregivers, and there's no cure for ALS. And so
right.
how do you find joy in together as a care team while you're declining, and deteriorating with ALS? It's a struggle. And as for me as a caregiver coach, like, it's hard to coach people when there's just so much trauma and anticipatory grief happening in their day-to-day life. So
Yeah.
you've been through a lot. You've been through a lot. Tell us a little bit more, Ben, about your caregiving experience with your family in particular.
Well, okay. I mean, for me personally, so again, like I just said, I just finished, many years of being very involved with my dad, and he was he was a phenomenal person. He was actually my role model for
Hmm.
almost everything I did in my life, and many people's dads are that. But he, even in his sickness, like you just referenced, it's so hard to find happiness and all that because it's such a, you said there's no cure and there's no, but we learned a lot from him along the way. He was never, I don't think we saw him even semi-depressed for one day since
Wow.
he got diagnosed. He literally made the most out of every day. He was happy. You could see the happiness on his face. He would laugh and smile and all that even after he couldn't talk or do much. And he was a tremendous role model for myself and my whole family. I will say and we did try to take the best care of him as possible. We were very involved. I do come from a very large family. Actually one of 15
Oh
siblings.
my, yes, I did see that. I
So
thought my family was big. I'm one of six.
yes, and six is
Whew,
big,
there's
but
this.
15 is
Oh
huge.
my goodness. Yes. What did your mom feed you guys growing up?
And
Pasta.
she's like Superwoman. She really,
Yeah.
she,
Woo.
she had us all, and she took care of us and gave us all a lot of attention and everything. So I don't know. I don't have 15, and I can't imagine quite
No.
that. So, but growing up in a very large family, I grew up with my great grandmother moving into our home when she was 99. She lived till 102 in our house with all these kids and everything, just because she had gotten too old for my grandparents to take care of her because they were aging. So my parents took her in and didn't just take her in, took care of everything she needed. And my dad had hired a nurse's aide to be with her during the day at first, and then towards the end, even overnight, 24 hours. So I was pretty young. I was a young teenager when that was going on. So I kind of had a lot of exposure to what it means and what's involved with caring for somebody who's really aging and becomes dependent on
Mm.
their surroundings and not self-dependent. So it was
And those are
definitely,
formative years for you, for sure,
yeah,
as a youth, to see that. There's, I've talked to both my kids on the podcast before, and just to kind of get their perspective on it as caregiving from their seat. And it's interesting. And I think it does, there's a lot of strengths that come from witnessing the care of your grandmother like that, and seeing the importance of family values and how the group pitches in, and having compassion for the aging process, and also for your parents who are juggling a lot of different things.
yeah,
I
no,
can't ima- I
definitely.
can't imagine. And I'm curious too, like, Ben, with your siblings. I think about this with my siblings, as I'm a 51-year-old woman and one of six kids. Is like, the chances of me having to be there for one of my siblings is also stronger. How do you all talk about, like, or do you talk about, like, end of life, and maybe this current situation with your dad has prompted some of those discussions?
I don't know. I'll be honest, honestly, that's not a conversation we have a lot. We're much more like even with my dad and being as sick as he was, we were so focused, and that was based on what his wishes and everything, just focused on doing everything possible, but focusing on just the care,
Mm,
getting everything that was done. It wasn't a big focus on the end of life, although it's obviously a reality and it's,
yeah.
but I think that part of what we've been through, and even my great grandmother lived till 102,
Wow.
and she was well into 102, and she was walking and talking and everything till the very end. Even there, it wasn't like, oh, so she's so old, so it's an end of life type of thing. It was like, I mean, end of life is a reality, and it's okay. You live the life to the fullest, you be the best person you can be, and you just leave your best mark that you can. And that's the only thing to do, because after you're gone, and it's only what any lessons or that you've been able to teach others, or do perpetuate good for the future. So
Yes.
ultimately that's really what it's about. But we so I don't know about that. I don't know how to best answer that as far as
No,
like
it's
feelings,
fine.
honestly, but
I
it
was curious because it's kind of fresh in my head lately. Particularly, I have a brother that's single. He's not married. He doesn't have kids. Like I've got an older brother with a developmental disability, so he's kind of more situated. But I have some single siblings that for me, like having been through the end of life process a couple times, I have felt like I want to be present and I want to just savor every minute with them. And by having some of these things outlined allows me that gift, and also with them to kind of be present. So I don't have it all worked out either. That's why I'm kind of just, I thought maybe you would have some answers for me, but so we'll figure it
well
out. We'll figure it out together.
yeah, we could figure that out together. And there are definitely some things that that we can touch on, and that make the end of life, I guess, journey. Not that I wanted this conversation to be about end of life. It was
No,
about
yeah.
living with life, and even as people age. But the truth is, if people are aware of what's involved with taking care of seniors as they age, it definitely creates a much more pleasant, and first of all, longevity and quality of life off the bat, no question. I mean, that you'll see every day. But even when you go to that end of life, you know, uh, piece of it, that it definitely creates much more quality of preparedness, and you're not you could really embrace what's going on, knowing that you've created the best environment
Yeah.
for the senior, for the caregiver, a realistic environment. Every single person, it's one of the things about people. There's like, we're people. We're not like things. You know what I mean? We're
Robots.
not
Yeah.
exactly. So every person's situation is different. Their mental, their social needs, their cognitive ability, their their family dynamic, their physical. People ask all the time. So when someone gets old, should they be in a nursing home? Should they be at home? Should they be in assisted living? And it's like, that is not a question that is one size fits all. That is like,
No.
okay, where do you live? Well, if you live in some center city somewhere in a high rise in a small apartment, yeah, chances are you can't stay at home, because it's very hard to make that handicapped accessible and so on and so forth. But if you live in a ranch on some, then maybe, and there's care that's available in that area of home care and other things, then of course, if somebody could stay at home and get the appropriate care that they need to give their physical support and their medical support, then of course, in a cognitive and emotional way, they still feel their youth, they still feel their independence, because that's where they always were. Now,
Right.
on the flip side, there are times that people are at home, and naturally they live somewhat of a secluded life, because their adult children are adults and they have their own families. and whatever else is going on. So there's no one there present. So therefore, yeah, of course, an assisted living or, whatever it is might be the best, because now you're giving them a situation where they're safe, but they also have a social life. So
Yes.
it's so dependent
It's a
on different.
puzzle. It's like it is
Exactly.
and then, like you said, it's not a one size fits all approach, and that every situation is different. And I coach a lot of caregivers, and some of them feel guilty. They're like, well, I don't even have my person in my house. And I'm like, you're still a caregiver. There's still so many things you're doing. The roles change, but there's still a big task there in place. I want to talk about, the meat of our conversation around Medicare, Medicaid in particular. But first, before we do that, I kind of feel like we need to kind of get some definitions and some stuff out there so that
Okay.
people know what we're talking about. So, in your words, what's the difference between Medicare and Medicaid?
Okay. So it's a very commonly made mistake, or
Exactly.
just, it's which is very understandable. But they're both. I mean, the similarity is that, I know you asked me what the difference is, but I'll start with the similarity, is that they are both programs that the government offers that cover different health benefits. That is the similarity. The difference is that Medicare is really part of the Social Security system. And basically, if you're at retirement age, and I guess for the most part, you would have had to pay into Social Security taxes in your working life, then you're eligible for Medicare. And Medicare, basically, if you think about it, most of us, let's say just working people, which is the majority of our country, we you have some sort of private health insurance
Mm-hmm.
of some sort. And Medicare, for the most part, replaces that private health insurance. The thought process is very simple. If you just simplify it, obviously there's more to every picture, but when people are working, most employers give health insurance as a benefit, even if you have to pay towards it or not, depending on your employer, depending on what state and all that stuff. But your employer offers you health insurance, and that's how you go to the doctor. And if one has to go be hospitalized, so on and so forth. Um, Most people, once they reach 65, 67, they're no longer actively working. They would naturally lose such a benefit because they don't have an employer.
Mm.
And the government says, you've been paying your Social Security taxes all these years. Here's what you get back for paying into that. We are now offering you your health insurance that you can use at the doctor, in the hospital, and so on. Medicaid is not part of the Social Security system. It's actually part of the welfare system, but it is for aged Medicaid, institutional Medicaid for seniors. It is it's a long-term care insurance, where Medicare is not Medicare is a regular health insurance. Medicaid is long-term care. It covers custodial care, and it covers a whole lot of other things that are associated with long-term care,
Mm.
like transportation, because people that are in long-term care situations usually need to get medically transported to doctor's appointments and to other things, back and forth, or to an adult daycare, or to other appropriate, you know, support that would need to give them some sort of medical care or other
Mm-hmm.
other care. So Medicaid covers the long-term care, custodial care, or and that can be in a variety of settings. It can cover home care, it can cover assisted living facility care in some states, and some states it doesn't, and it can cover skilled nursing facility, nursing home care.
Yeah.
So that's the basic difference. It's a short-term insurance, like day-to-day insurance, versus a long-term care insurance. And for Medicaid, you don't just get it when you turn a certain age. It's about, you have to be financially and clinically eligible to be approved for Medicaid. And it's a pretty involved process to make sure, because there's a lot of paperwork that is involved, and it's something that is, it's there are two challenges with it. There's a lot of paperwork, and most people don't know exactly what it is that Medicaid needs. Many people don't have all the paperwork accessible for their mom or their dad, or whoever it is that they're caring for. And it usually happens during a time when someone's transitioning to long-term care, because your usual scenario is, mom, dad, whoever it may be, might be 85 years old and pretty independent, but suddenly falls down the steps, slips on the ice, does something like that. That can happen to anybody, but seniors are definitely a little more prone. And something breaks, something goes wrong, they end up in the hospital. Now they're in the hospital, so they have their coverage, they have their care, they may have gotten a surgery, they may have not, whatever it was, and now they're the hospital is no longer the place for them. They have to be discharged to a rehab facility. So now all this just happened. Now all of a sudden the rehab facility tells you, yeah, mom's doing rehab, but she can't really go home anytime soon. She's gonna have to stay here and be cared for the foreseeable future, or whatever. And now you're dealing with mom being put into a facility. You're dealing with potentially an anxious spouse at home, who's your dad, your the spouse of mom, and now all of a sudden you have to figure out this long-term care insurance they have to get in place so that this facility that's caring for it can be paid. So it comes at a very difficult.
Yes, a crisis usually.
It's a crisis.
It's a family
Exactly.
crisis. I mean, it's not like people, like you said, like even when we were talking about our siblings, like we're not sitting around talking about this stuff. I can tell you that, I've learned a lot through Happy Healthy Caregiver and talking to different people, but I'm still learning so much every day. And one of the first big learnings I had as a family caregiver for my parents was Medicare, the one that you get when you at a certain age, does
Mhm.
not pay for anything long-term care related. And the assisted living communities are so expensive. My mom was in a couple and she's on the highest level of care, but not in a memory care. And it was a used car every month. I want to say like 8,000, 9,000. It's a very
Yeah.
nice community in a metro area. But it was, luckily my parents had the financial means privately to pay for that. But then on a flip side, my husband cared for his mom who had lung cancer. She was divorced. So things were happening, like you said, she had lung cancer. She started getting weak. She fell. It was like one crisis after another. We were able to kind of do it for a while. And then at some point, he's applying for Medicaid for his mom. She's not employable anymore. She's divorced. She has some beat up car. She's in like subsidized kind of housing. And I want to say he got denied 6 or 7 times from that process. And I watched from the sidelines as he was like beating his head against the wall. And we were thinking, if if my mother-in-law and my kid's grandma can't get Medicaid, like who gets Medicaid? Like it was
Right.
so frustrating to watch that struggle. She never did end up getting it before she passed. And a lot of the financial stuff came out of pocket for us. I mean, it was some of it we didn't pay, like some bills and things. It was like they couldn't really come for us, but it was but we made sure that her basic needs were being met. So tell this is how we enter into the conversation of your business and NavigAid. So tell me how you got into this business and how NavigAid can help people with this frustrating process about getting their loved ones hopefully successfully applied for Medicaid.
Okay, so I can definitely share that with you.
Yeah.
So, like I said, first of all, I referenced my great grandmother. I didn't even get to the part that years later, my great grandmother had passed away, and then my mother's parents had got old. They were up there, well up in their 80s, and my grandmother she got sick, and my grandparents moved into my parents' house as well then. So this was when I was
Mm.
much older teenager. I was not 10, 11. I was more like 20, and I saw that transition as well, where they moved in and my parents cared for them. So I always had this kind of, I guess, upbringing. From my upbringing, it was just being involved with care, and it wasn't like we just watched. We weren't just spectators. We were involved with the care, both my great grandmother, my grandparents, and then ultimately, like I said,
Your dad.
my dad got sick, and we were very involved with his care, for sure. But along the way, I ended up many years ago at this point, close to 20, I was working actually in a nursing home. I was going to go for administration on the nursing home side, and was very involved interacting with the patients and their families on their insurance, on coming in and and this Medicaid was constantly a struggle. It was all of a sudden like something like they didn't have enough going on. Now all of a sudden they were like, okay, now we have to get Medicaid. And it's not something you could just do because Medicaid basically wants to understand, is this individual eligible? Are they a citizen of the country? Are they, what's their financial situation? Because Medicaid is viewed as a payer of last resort. So therefore, they always want to make sure that you have exhausted all of your resources and then you're eligible for Medicaid.
Mm.
So they want to make sure if somebody had $100,000 in their bank and now they said, hey, I need Medicaid, so let me just write out my $100,000 check to my wonderful daughter, Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm.
And now let me get Medicaid. That Medicaid does not want to, is not allowed. So
Right.
that's why they ask for financial history. They ask for 5 years worth of financial history, and not just bank accounts, anything of financial value, in stocks, bonds, life insurance, assets, including cars, houses, property, and anything. So it's an extremely, and I just witnessed that all of these families trying to figure out like, oh, I don't even know where mom's bank accounts are. I don't know where they are. I wasn't taking care of her finances her whole life, and there was always this constant struggle, and it was really a struggle on the family of these seniors that needed care. So I've helped many of them while I was working on that side of it, and then I realized there's a big need here, and setting up a system that people can get the help. There's a big community out there. There's a lot. For example, in the work that I do, I work with many elder law attorneys because there's a lot of rules and regulations and potential exemptions that people don't have to utilize all their money. They can save some of their money. But again, so what I've set up as non-attorneys is what we can do. We initially set up a company, Senior Planning Services, known as SPS to many, where we can help these individuals through the paperwork part. The paperwork part is extremely time consuming, extremely difficult, and very foreign and unknown. People get
Sure.
stuck, they get tripped up. Where to get something as basic as, can you prove mom's citizenship? Now, if you don't know where she keeps her paperwork, how are you going to do it? So if you have to
I don't
request,
even know where my own paperwork for that would be. Like a birth
right,
certificate, I
a
guess. I
birth
don't know.
certificate, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So what we do is we're really good at knowing, okay, how do you order a copy of a birth certificate? And how do you get this? How do you get the bank statements? And what's Medicaid looking for in the bank statements? Why are they asking you for bank statements? They're not just asking because they want paperwork. They want to see, did you spend your money appropriately or did you give it away?
Mm.
What's going on? So that's really, it
There's
was,
an art to it. I mean, it take you for you to do it, for me to do it. It's like a one process. I've got to learn the vocabulary. I've got to learn the process. But for you all who are doing this all the time, it's just part of what you do, and it's like an accountant who knows the accounting tax code,
exactly,
yeah, it's like it needs a specialist, for sure, to help you
absolutely.
navigate these murky waters. And like you said, usually it's during a crisis where the last place you want to be is looking for documents and in front of a computer. You want to be, either taking care of business or taking care of your loved ones. um what the one thing that you said, though, that like this is part of I had an Instagram live with a guest recently who said, and I guess I'm checking on this, is like there's a that you I had always thought Medicaid in the long-term care, like external community thing, and how important that was. But you can use Medicare money for, and you said this earlier, like home care. And in some cases, in some states, Medicaid money could even be used to help pay the family caregiver to do home care, is what I
Correct.
understood. And that sometimes in that situation there would not be a 5-year look back. I don't know if that's true or not.
Okay, so it really depends. There's a lot of different programs.
Yes.
Medicaid is not one. Generally speaking, on a federal level, because Medicaid is it's interesting. It's a shared program, as far as financially, but budgetary. So it's really a federal program, but it is administered state by state by each
Mm.
individual state, and the budget is shared as well. So there are certain general rules and guidelines that come on a federal level. So nationally, that's the way, that's the rules. So like, for example, the 5-year look back is the general rule that that's how long Medicaid can look back. And the point of that is, I'm just going to digress for a second there, is if somebody has assets and they wanted to go do estate planning and set up trusts and protect their assets, they can do that. And after 5 years, that money is no longer accessible, vis-a-vis a Medicaid application and a Medicaid due diligence. So that's a whole nother, which we can get to, we're having
Yeah. No,
because
those are learnings I've
oh,
been learning too. Like if you own property, maybe talk to your elder law care attorney about
yeah, that's what.
look into a trust because yeah, we're learning all the time. I call this financial self-care, by the way. This is like stuff that is that worry and those fears in our brain. And, even with my husband, it's like, what if something happens to one of us? Like, how are we going to pay for that? What does that look like? Um, just because we don't want to replicate the same scenario for our kids for sure is part of the motivation. So what is using your NavigAid process like? So I know I want to look into this Medicaid thing. I'm a caregiver. I can see this train coming. I want to kind of figure this out. I hear about NavigAid. What do I do?
Okay, so I mean, just to do it. So, and also to answer your other
Just do
question
it.
before,
Yeah.
for a second, is that there are programs there are sometimes if you're in home care in certain states, they don't have the same look back, right? So you can get
Mm,
you eligible without Medicaid looking back 5 years or even sometimes a year. Sometimes it's a month or 3 months, but generally there is a whole lot of paperwork and information that you have to provide. So after being in this space for about 15 years, helping people, thankfully helped tens of thousands of families, over the years to obtain their benefits and made their lives a whole lot easier
yes, I
in the
bet.
process, and ultimately made sure that people got the care they need. I mean, because you have to also, and I'm going to get to navigate in 2 seconds, but Medicaid
No worries.
is a phenomenal tool that the government offers. It really is. It's something that allows people to age in their appropriate settings. So it can cover home care if that's where someone is best suited. It can cover a nursing home if that's where someone's best suited. In many instances, it can cover assisted living if that's where someone's best suited. And or if someone's at home but they have to go to an adult daycare, so that to make sure during the day they're busy and stimulated and cared for. So there's so much that Medicaid offers, that to ensure that people don't only have the medical coverage but the right setting, that
Mm.
into they stay
To keep them safe and
happy.
happy and
Yeah,
healthy. Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
that's your whole thing, happy and healthy, but it's really true, because if you're not happy, you're probably not healthy. And if
Right.
you're not healthy, you're not happy. So you need the right care in the right place, so that mentally, emotionally, socially, you're getting the right stimulation, and you're getting the right just environment, atmosphere, and interaction and all that. And that's just an amazing thing about Medicaid. Um, so we launched, over time, I realized that there's so many people, like yourself, like myself, that are relatively young, but may have aging parents. We're not kids
We're
anymore.
getting younger, by the way.
We're all getting younger, right?
Yeah.
So and all of a sudden, and you realize that, and we're just in a day and age and a time and place where people are accustomed and used to and dependent on doing things that are accessible online, on your phone. It's just, that's how you get help. That's how people, they need help. They go to Google. How do I do this? What's the, so we were able to create a tool that, for those people that really want to kind of get through this process on their own, where you want to kind of apply for Medicaid for your mom, dad, or whoever it is that the caregiver is caring for. Um, but you realize that you can't really do it fully on your own. So this tool with NavigAid, it really walks you through the process by simplifying the steps that are involved, versus, if someone went and got a government application for Medicaid and it was 16 pages long and there was a
No,
lot of
thank you.
information, a table of assets, and you're not sure what you should list or what you shouldn't list. And versus, come on to NavigAid. Hey, what's your name? What's your relationship to the,
Yeah. You'll get it in
what,
English. Yeah.
yeah,
Not government ease.
what kind of Medicaid do what kind of care do you need? What state do you live in? Where do and then it's like, you're answering just questions. Where does mom live? What is her, is mom married? Is she single? Is she widowed? Is she divorced? Is she, all these different types of things. And all of those questions are answering and filling out the application for you
Mm.
and really simplifying it. And when it says, is mom a US citizen? Yes. Provide one of the following. Do you have a copy of her passport, of her birth certificate? If the answer is no, then it's a how-to tip. How do I get that? Here it is. Here's the form to request a birth certificate. So it really
I
walks
love the spoon
through
fed. It's
the
spoon
process,
fed.
spoon-fed,
Yeah.
and nobody, it's not because people aren't intelligent or capable, it's that it's something foreign. And like we said a few times already, you're dealing with these situations usually in crisis. And instead of having another convoluted, difficult task that you have no idea how to deal with, or just get over this huge obstacle, we say, come to NavigAid, mynavigate.com, and we'll kind of just walk you through it. It's not
Yes.
intimidating. It's broken down into very easy to answer questions. And when you have something that you need to do, we can give you the how-to tip. This is how you get this information. Why are they asking for this? There's a whole lot of information that's shared. And if you're still stuck, you could always say, can I chat with a representative?
Yeah. Help or still, which
Right.
I love because and it's affordable. This is an affordable
Very, very
tool.
affordable.
Yes.
We're
Around
in our
$100.
We're in
And
our
then
introductory year. It's still $99. We feel
yes.
like the price point, it probably needs to be a bit higher, but still extremely affordable. Not
Yes.
thousands. I'm talking about a couple $100s. And
Yeah, well, I mean, for sure. It's like I know creating software is. You're talking to an IT product manager, so I know there's a lot that goes into that. You do offer the Happy Healthy Caregiver listeners 10% off
yeah,
with the code caregiver. So we'll put that in the show notes for as a reminder, and also link to mynavigate.com in there. So I know that we would have spent that money in a heartbeat back with my mother-in-law. Like because we were literally banging our head against the wall, and it would have been so nice to know that we and like confident that we had done the process right, and then when the results came back, I had somebody to talk it through who could walk us through kind of the next steps, or maybe try this or wait this long and do it again, or just something like other than
right.
just a denial that her whatever it was $870 social security check was too much money, which who can live on that? I'm not sure. But anyway, okay, well that's a
Yeah.
lot of good stuff there. Anything else you want to say about Navigate or Medicaid or any of that before we move into self-care?
Nothing really.
Okay.
Again, like I said, Medicaid is a phenomenal. It's a very, very universal program. It helps so many people, and I'm really glad that we were able to successfully launch, Navigate at, mynavigate.com, because we were able to give that access, like you said, for a very affordable $100.
Yep.
Well, really the capability of making sure that they have access to the care for their loved ones in a much more simplified and unintimidating and just easy to use kind of way. And it's something that, being in that position of helping people with Medicaid and being involved with caregiving for so many years, it's really something that we feel really good about and are proud of, that we were able to bring something like this, a first to market kind of deal where it really helps people in a unique way.
It does. It does. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for you to be a happy, healthy caregiver partner to offer just because not only are you helping families with providing them a safe place for care and all of that, but you're helping family caregivers not, mitigate their burnout and their frustration of having all of these things to worry about. And that speaks to me for sure, for that. So speaking about self-care, Ben, what does your self-care look like? Like, what are some of the things that you do to take care of yourself and just show up so that you can continue to help other people in your life?
Oh no. If you ask my wife, she'll say not enough, that's for sure.
We can always improve. We're a work in progress.
Yes, yes. So it's I mean it's really hard because like I said, and I know we referenced this a few times. I was, I do have six beautiful children, and
Oh,
I'm,
wow. You have
you
six
know,
kids.
yes. So it's there, that's a handful, and that's time consuming, and time consuming in the greatest way. And I did have my dad who I was caring for. I also do have, you mentioned as well that you have a developmentally disabled, special needs brother who
Hmm.
also take care of as well. And then my mom is not too young herself, so
You'll
we're
never be bored, Ben.
never be bored. And because of the way, I guess, what we've learned from my parents, I actually do also take care of a couple other seniors that don't have families. So I'm actually their power of attorney for a couple of people that are just don't have anyone to care for them. So I I'm involved with their care. One of them is actually in a hospital right now as we speak,
Oh,
and
wow.
one is in a nursing home. But we're, I but to your point, I think it's very important that the caregivers stay happy and healthy as well, not just the people that they're caregiving for. Um, so with that, I mean, honestly, like I said, if you ask my wife, she'd be like, "You don't do anything for yourself. You're just running and running." But I do have, I run, and I try to make sure I get out and I run at least 2 to 3 times a week, and I try to do it outside as often as possible, whether it's winter or summer, because
Hmm.
getting out there and getting fresh air and being outside and
Yep.
getting exercise, it's good for your body, it's good for your mind, it's good for everything, your soul.
Everything.
It's
Yes.
good for it
Well, that
all.
is something. I think that's great. Let's go through okay, so this is the lightning round. I'm going to pull some prompts from my journal, the Just for You daily self-care
Okay.
journal. And I mark some pages. We'll see. Your score might be higher than you think. So you kind of mentioned one already, but like, what activity could you do that combines physical movement with spending time with someone? So a twofer, I call those, like a buy one get one. Like, as caregivers, sometimes it's so hard to splice up our time. So is there something that you could do for your self-care, like an activity that you enjoy, that you could also bring your wife or a child or somebody else around? Like, what would that look like?
Well, so you could, because you can, running you could always do with somebody else, but my wife's not a runner. Actually, we took tennis lessons a while ago because we're like, that's a good two for thing,
Yeah.
play with somebody else. But I'm telling you, the whole six kids thing, it kind of petered out. So we definitely made a big effort there, and we did it for a little while where we had this, husband wife tennis matches going on. Um, but I do try to get out for, do some nature walks, or
Perfect.
walk, run with the wife, maybe even if the baby, we have a 1 year old, so we'll
Wow.
put in the jogger stroller and kind of all three of us. So it's actually more than a twofer. We got
Yeah. No, then it's just like you start kind of exponentially growing. I think I'm like, you're more than sandwich generation. You're like, I don't know, club sandwich, whatever. Sandwich being squeezed between kids and
right.
aging parents. But I used to say if my life was a sandwich, it was sloppy Joe. But I'm not sure what kind of sandwich you got going on there. That'll give you some food for thought. Um, and who's a person that inspires you?
Oh, a lot of people. But I will say this. I mean, I work with, and I've met along the way some great people. I have great partners. I have some great employees, and but I will say, I definitely, my parents, as both of them, and probably on a certain level, my dad, who, obviously just passed, but he was definitely it inspired me for a lot of what I do or try to do. I can't say I do it all as well as he does or did, that's for sure. But just always being there, ready and up for the challenge, in a way that you just do what you have to do and try to
Mm.
be the best person you can be and especially to other people. So
I'm sure, like, I know he was proud of you, and I'm sure he's, wherever looking and proud of you as well. We say in my family, both of my parents are deceased. And so, like, sometimes my dad was definitely the business savvy one and did not know about Happy Healthy Caregiver, started after he passed. And some of my siblings have their own businesses. And so we call each other and we say, what would dad do? What would dad say? Like,
we could
there,
relate. Yep. All 15 of us do that.
yes, yes.
Even
Um,
in this recent time that he just left us, but everyone's like, what would he do? What would he, so
yeah,
for sure, I could relate to that.
I love that. Um, What's your favorite thing about fall? Today's the first day of fall that we're recording this, but like, what do you
Oh,
like about
really?
this? Yeah, I think so. It doesn't
You
feel
should have
like
given me
it in
like a heads
Georgia.
up. You could have sent me like an email, like, hey, I'm going to
Oh
ask you
no,
some of
this
this
is
stuff.
this is lightning round. You don't get heads up. No heads
And
up.
apparently you don't.
Last question though.
Um,
What's one thing you like about this season?
well, very simple. One thing, I don't even have to get that deep. It's just that I think that there's the just the colors, when all that starts, it
What
just,
part of the world are you in? Do you live in?
I'm in New Jersey.
Okay, that's what I thought. But yeah, oh, you get the colors so nice
Yeah,
up
a
there. I'm
lot
from
of foliage.
Pennsylvania originally, but now I live in the South. It's not quite the
Oh,
same.
okay. So yeah, so you definitely get it. And also, like I said, I do go running. So when you're running on like these nature trails during the fall, other than watching out for a lot of like big piles of wet leaves so you don't slip because they could be deceiving, really.
Yeah, or acorns. Have you ever just like, woo,
Yeah.
yes.
But outside of that, the colors while you're running through like that foliage is definitely good for it. Just keeps you, it does something. It does
It's
something that's really nice.
yeah, it's Mother Nature with her paintbrush for sure.
Exactly.
Any other parting words of wisdom you'd like to add, and how do people learn more about what you have to offer, Ben?
Um, okay, so my product, I mean, my only, not that I feel like I have such wisdom, I just have some experience,
That's
but
it. You're the expert.
um, but I will say this, I can tell you that, and I've told this to people, and I've, always just thinking about the future, I guess, is always important. You don't have to harp on it. You don't have to spend all your time. It's much more valuable to spend your time in the present, here and now, and live life to the fullest. But knowing that things, especially if someone has parents that are getting older, they're aging, they're not old, they're still active. It's thinking about, okay, where does mom keep and dad keep their files? Where's their paperwork? Is it in order? Are things in one place? Does mom still have 30 different bank accounts because when she was younger, if you opened up an account, you got a free, fanny pack, and
Mm.
everybody was opening accounts all over the place because that's stuff that will cause you grief, trip you up, create denials or questions or for coverage on Medicaid as people get older. So you just want to be aware, like where do mom and dad take care of theirs? Where's their files? What's their stuff? Do they still have old bank accounts open? Let's close them up while they're still young and active and engaged. And you tell them we're not doing this because they're gonna get all nervous, like, oh, well, wait, I'm still here. You could just say that old stuff is only gonna cause you, So it's a lot of times just being aware of
Hmm.
knowing that the future is inevitable and that you want to just try to get your bearings on what's going on so that in that crisis mode, you at least don't have as big of a crisis to deal with. Um,
I would say even like, I mean, I'm doing that right now at age 51 for my kids. Like, I have a partner called My Data Diary. I think actually they're the sponsor of this episode. And it's like a little USB where I can take pictures and I can put everything in there. And so then my kids will have
this little thing,
thumb
right?
drive with everything on it, and I'll tell them
That's
exactly where it
brilliant.
is.
That's
Yeah.
brilliant. That's
And
the way.
it's a pain, but it's gonna be it's I feel good about it, and I know it's gonna help them later down the road. And me, like, I mean, something could happen to my husband or I,
Right,
and one of
anything. I
us.
mean, you never know what tomorrow brings,
No.
but I only say this because in dealing with so many thousands of families over the last 15 years, you see that so much of the challenge and the some of the most time consuming or stressful parts of it are the search. I don't know. And now mom is not doing well, so she can't answer our questions, or she's starting to get dementia, or dad, and it's like, you don't want to be in a situation where if you could just take a little bit of effort earlier and just be aware of what is where things are and what's been going on, it could really take hours and hours of
Mm,
work and a lot of anxiety and stress and
it's good
worry.
advice.
Take that just can take it away. And as far as what else, everyone, mynavigate.com. And if anyone has any personal questions, you could always just send ben@mynavigate.com, and I'm happy to answer any question.
Aw, thank you, Ben. You have been a trooper to put me go through the lightning round and do all that. And I just am really grateful that this resource exists for people and that there's smart, wise people out there that are thinking of ways to make this process easier for caregivers because they need all the help they can get. So thank you for what you do and what you provide.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you. You do great,
Aw.
great, great work, and happy and healthy is a very important motto to live by, especially in the caregiving world. So thank you, and thank you for having me on, and for your patience while I had to push off these
No, always. That always, family's always first. Thank
yeah.
you.